Once again, I'm Jonathan Herps, founder and CEO of Scale Up Growth Partners. Welcome to our Stories of Scaling Up series, where we will be chatting with owners, managing directors, founders, and business leaders of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies going forward. Today, we're speaking with Raja Pradeep. Raja is co-founder and CEO of AUP IT. Welcome, Raja. Welcome to the interview.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Nice to meet you.
Great, thank you. So listen, let's just jump straight in. What do you do? What does the company do?
So we provide fractional CIOs, fractional CTOs to small, medium-sized businesses, including startups and scale-ups that can't justify having a full-time C-suite resource, manning strategy and doing IT leadership. And we've got a team of about 20 odd CIOs and CTOs that have undertaken over 350 projects over the last 6-7 years.
And so tell me about this sort of example of some of the services the fractional CIOs would provide.
Yep. So we recently worked on a post-merger integration project where a large Japanese paper manufacturer acquired a couple of businesses here in Australia. And obviously, it wouldn't make sense to work on 3 different systems, payroll systems, have 3 sets of department heads and what have you. So our CIO and CTOs got involved from the point of view of consolidating systems and looking at old archaic processes, revamping them, and making sure that when the light switch got clicked on, that everything would work from the get-go without compromising the operations of these 3 disparate businesses.
And I think I was reading that you also will work with your clients on strategy, almost a gap analysis of what they need. Interesting, given I've just had a spam call from allegedly Amazon. There's so much in the security area as well, which I believe you get involved in.
And the threat landscape has evolved so much in the last 3 to 5 years that we often have these conversations with our customers. And a CIO would then wear a CISO hat, a Chief Information Security Officer, if you will, right? And and help customers understand, navigate that threat landscape, and put in place pragmatic solutions. Often it's not about just getting rid of an antivirus solution or getting something new in. It's about leveraging what you've already got and putting human-centric best practices in place so that you're not exposed and the threat actor goes elsewhere.
Okay. So how long have you been operating?
Since 2009.
Okay, so a good time. How would you describe your core customer, the ideal customer for your business?
The ideal customer is not so much about the vertical they're in. We've got customers in over 100 different verticals, and it's not about the size, but they've got to be progressive in the sense that they see IT as an asset and not as a cost center, and they're willing to leverage technology and think of IT as something beyond the support, but something that can add an extra dimension to their business and how they go to market. And they are the ideal partner for us to collaborate.
Okay, thank you. So we've all been through the pandemic. It's really rocked us all. What are some of the initiatives you put in place from the pandemic that you're actually going to keep in the business going forward?
So it's interesting you said that, and obviously businesses have different challenges. Every business is different. For us, working from home was something that was part of our DNA even before the pandemic. And given the nature of the work that we do as knowledge workers, we always ensured that we got the right team in place. So there's complete trust within all team members, so that no matter where you are, whether you work from the beach or from a cafe, from home or a customer site or from the office, you just got the work done. So it's always been a very outcome-driven mindset that we have in the business. During the pandemic, we found it was quite interesting. We were forced to work from home, but also because we were an important or critical industry. So where we had to go on site for, say, some of our healthcare providing customers, healthcare provider customers. It was interesting because some of the teammates struggled, from a mental health perspective, just being by themselves, and they really cherished the opportunity they would get from, say, once a month or a couple of times a week to catch up with everyone, have a coffee, and socialize and collaborate. So it was more that than an output driven concern. It was more about the team getting together every so often and still keeping that team culture alive. I think that was a very important piece.
And that's something you're continuing.
Absolutely. So everyone's got complete flexibility. We don't have a policy in place where you've got to work from the office, or it's 3 days in the office or 2 days from home. We just leave it to the individual so that they manage their time and they manage the output. Where they work from is up to them. Interestingly enough, what we are finding is the minute you give people the choice, and then they like hanging out with their teammates and collaborating and having those coffees and lunches, right? Because it's not about productivity or output. It's about people connecting with other people and fostering that team culture and being and that feeling that they get of being part of a team. As well.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I've been grappling with the same things in my business, and my team members who are, we've got, I've got globally, I outsource globally. I've got coaches in Perth and Brisbane and Melbourne, but I bring them all together once a quarter for a couple of days planning with my team who are locally based here. They've chosen to be in the office 2 days a week. And because they love the collaboration and they bounce off each other, but they still have the freedom of not being and not being here, which is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And often you find that sometimes it's harder when people are working remotely to find time in someone's calendar. But if you're sitting right next to them, you can just turn around and ask them a question, and that you learn with that, and you get speed and all that sort of stuff with it as well. So.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and the other some of those other collaboration tools we use, even basic things like Slack. At least it gives that same moment collaboration, which is I find really important.
Oh yeah.
Oh, thank you. So. What does the future look like? What do you see as the main challenges for your business going forward?
Good question. In fact, with COVID, what we realized is that the world, in many ways, is smaller than we think it is. Given that we collaborate with remote teams as well, and we've got team members all across Australia, in Singapore, and in Hong Kong, we started picking up business overseas. We put in place plans to take us into other markets, and we've got customers overseas now. So we have stopped thinking of ourselves as just a local business, and think of ourselves as a global consulting agency and a systems integrator. And the plans for us are to expand globally, bring on new business, perhaps do a couple of acquisitions along the way, and yeah.
Fabulous. I mean, the only downside of that I find is time zone. I've got clients who range from UK, Gibraltar, the United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, and now West Coast USA. And the time zones are, from my perspective, they start to become very challenging.
Yeah. And then we've got to find ways to not be the bottlenecks in our own business, right? And have other people do delivery in those time zones. And
exactly right.
So it's a turnkey operation that runs without yourself. But that's a whole different conversation around scaling.
Well, it's certainly one of the challenges. I agree.
Yeah.
So, what do you think over time has been your biggest learning since you became a business owner?
There've been a lot of learnings, and the biggest learning has been that you need to surround yourself with people who believe in your vision and who believe in the direction you're heading in and where you're going as a business. Because in business, there'll always be missteps and mistakes and obstacles, right? And every failure is not an indictment of the person who's running the business, but it's just a strategy or a technique, a tactic that's gone wrong. You need to pick yourself, back up, brush everything off, and then go in another direction. And you can't do it if you don't have a solid team that believes in you. So having people that believe in your vision and mission, having the right people from day one is very very crucial. The other big learning is alliances and partnerships. Sometimes I think when you start up a new business, you tend to go in all directions because you've gone from the comfort of getting a paycheck from an employer month in, month out to basically writing your own, and you chase after everything that comes your way because you got to pay the bills. And then you quickly learn that not all business is good business, and the bad business can tend to burn you out. And then your delivery teams get stressed, and there's bad culture, bad friction in the business. So it's about learning early in the piece. And I don't know if there's a magic formula or not. I think every founder has got to define that for themselves. They have to, no matter how much you coach them or teach them, they still make that. It's better sometimes just to let them make that mistake and then learn and go, you know what, I shouldn't have picked that business up, but I did. Now I've learned. Here's where this is my niche, this is my area of strength. Let me stick to that thing. So
yeah, look, I think that there probably is a model. You'd expect me to say that. That's what I do for a living.
Of course. No.
But I do think there's a model. Now, having said that, it's about helping. I think from my clients' perspectives, and for that matter, mine, because I'm a CEO as well. It's actually learning that you can really only focus on 3 to 5 things at a time. Any more than that, forget it. It's all just not going to happen. I remember Steve Jobs. One of my favorite quotes of Steve Jobs was that he was as proud of what they chose not to do as what they chose to do. In other words, the decisions of where the focus should be. And one of the other things I coach is, who are your right clients? There are times when you need to sack clients. And that's a really hard one, particularly when you're in startup, scale-up mode. So,
the good word you use there, focus, right? Because especially in this day and age where, everything's, there's so much attention for your eyeballs in this information age, right? We fall prey to the bright shiny object syndrome more often than not, right? So
I agree.
Yeah, it's about cutting out that chatter. Yeah,
I agree. And your point about collaboration, you don't have to deliver it all yourself. Yeah,
100%.
So tell me, when you think of the word successful, who's the person that pops first into your mind?
Successful. Gary Kirsten.
Gary Kirsten.
Gary Kirsten wasn't a businessman, but he was an opening batsman for South Africa.
Oh, why?
And the reason I look up to him as a role model for success is he was an average batsman. He was not the most talented. He was not the most elegant cricketer out there, and you wouldn't pay to go and watch Gary Kirsten, bat out a day and just score 50. But he figured out a method, and he learned from his peers, and he put his ego to his side to pick up all these lessons and became perhaps the best opening batsman of that generation against some really hostile pace bowling from the Windies and Pakistanis and the Aussies back then. And his wicket was the most cherished and the most prized. And after he, and to your point about coaching, after he quit being a player, he became a very successful coach because he was then able to look at other people and realize, okay, here's how I overcame my own limitations, and these are the things that helped me evolve to the next level, and I can teach that to you. And he was able to make that successful transition from a great player to a great coach, which doesn't often happen. In fact, the opposite, right? And there's various reasons behind that. But I look at him as a role model for success outside of the business world.
No, it's, you know, as I mentioned to you before we started, this has become my favourite question of the 10 because some of the answers, like they're left field answers, literally. Gary Kirsten, one of my other CEOs I interviewed said Tom Cruise. I went, like I did with you with Gary Kirsten, why? You know, Tom Cruise, because he's had these couple of franchises that have gone for 40 plus years, the number of people that have been employed around him, etc. You know, and another said his grandfather, and gave like really, really interesting answers to the question. So, well, you know, when you're listening, go and jump in on some of those. It's
I will for sure. Yeah.
Top business books, podcasts, business blogs.
I remember reading a book called "The Hard Things About Hard Things," and I can't remember who wrote. I think it was a guy
Horowitz.
Horowitz. Yes.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting because I think he was very very open about some of the things. You know, unlike some of the self-help and other books, you know, where everyone goes, everything's hunky-dory, and here's how they quickly went from overnight from rags to riches. This guy has been very open about some of the problems he faced, very open about the mistakes he made, very open about the impact that it had on his relationships and so on. So I found that very instructive, very valuable.
Yeah, it's an excellent book, and particularly because he's I think he's one of the founding partners of, I think it's Andreessen Partners, which is one of the venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. So the lessons he's giving are coming from multiple companies that he's helped. So no, I agree. You can't see my bookcase; it's all a bit blurred out of it, but it's one of the key books I recommend. So listen, any last piece of advice or parting words for CEOs who are listening or aspiring CEOs?
One thing I learned a bit later on in my journey, and I wish I had that earlier, is always reach out and ask for help. There's as founders and CEOs, whether it's a startup or a mature business that has been going for 100 years, when we get together as a group, as a cohort, and collaborate with people like yourself, coaches and leadership people, you quickly realize that the things that you're struggling with, someone's already been there and fixed that before. So rather than struggle on your own and try to find 10 different ways of solving that problem, just ask. Just ask your peers, be open to your peers and help them. And so it goes both ways, right? Yeah, because everyone can't know everything.
Exactly right. And that in many ways is what this interview series is all about. Yeah, helping people with some of those tough questions. But no, that's great advice. Raja, thank you. That's the end of the interview. I really appreciate
Thanks for having me. It was a very nice talking to you.